category is consumer accounting, that's 1.1 million, that's payroll. Where your costs are up above, the payroll is in this category with a slight increase. Again, I think I said that the payroll was up above, but it's not, it's in this consumer accounting, and that's payroll for billing, for customer service, for service tax. Anybody that's putting their hands on something that's customer related, they charge their employee time and their payroll to this account. Our next category is customer assistance. For 2021, we're budgeting $3,200. This is a small account. This is just labor if we participate in a home garden show or any kind of awareness meeting. And so, as you know, with COVID, there wasn't a whole lot, and that's why there wasn't a lot of money in there, or spent in there, but this is what we budgeted that. The next category is all others. All others include office expense, office supplies, the pay station fees that we pay to the city of Copeland and the city of Stockdale, our office building maintenance, those types of things. So we have budgeted about $94,000, which is a slight increase over the prior year. So for customer accounts, that category, we're budgeting $2.2 million. In our next category, general administrative, our first subsection under there is administrative payroll. We are budgeting about $710,000. That's labor for our CEO, finance employees, technology, janitorial employees, and also our board of trustee fees. And so there is a slight increase in that just to account for increase in benefits and payroll that may occur. Next category is professional services. Those are for all the services we contract outside of our own in-house employees. And that could be for legal, financial, auditing, retirement, rate studies like the one we just completed, and also to be in compliance with our transmission access requirements. And we are budgeting right at $322,000. The following category is insurance. That didn't increase much. We're budgeting about $219,000. This is not employee benefit insurance. This is property, liability, workers' comp insurance. And so we're pretty steady in that area. The next category is employee benefits. It's budgeted at $486,000. That includes our labor, for payroll, for human resources, uniforms, other employee benefits like work boots, safety glasses, any unemployment fees we paid, and also a big portion of that is education and training for our employees. The following category is franchise fees. Those are the fees that we pay for what is collected inside of the city of Falls City and the city of La Verde, which are our franchise cities. We are budgeting right at $45,900, which is just a slight increase. And that may actually decrease depending on how the bills come in lower, but we felt it was safer to budget, kind of where we've been versus decreasing it significantly. Community support is the next category. We're budgeting right at $58,000, which is a large increase over the projection for 2020. We had some plans to do some things this year that unfortunately due to COVID we didn't get to do. So we're still budgeting that budgeting money in there to be able to do that, and that's why you see that increase over the 2020 budget. And then our community support are things like stock shows, the donations that we made, scholarships, any of the community service outreach things that we do, as well as our current newsletter. The next category is utilities, and that's exactly what you think. We're budgeting right at $298,000. That's telephone, internet, trash, water, sewer, and also technology expenses that are not capitalized. And this number also has a large increase, mostly because there's a lot of things we're going to have to set up at the new facility that aren't capital items, but we can't take them with us. So there's all kinds of different technology expenses that we're going to see in the 2021 budget that we won't see in other years just to get that facility set up properly. And the final category is all others, budgeted at $170,000, and that includes bad debt expense, interest that we pay on customer deposits, fees that we pay for our outstanding bonds, not the interest and principal, but the fees to administer it, advertising, membership dues, and then any vehicle expense that happens to follow any of these categories up above. So the general administrative budget for 2021 is right at $2.3 million. Overall, that leaves us with an operating budget excluding purchase power of $7.7 million. This is when we say this is the part that we can control. We can't control the CPS energy bill, the purchase power, other than negotiating it out, but what people use is what's going to flow up into that purchase power. So our overall budget, including that, is right at 27.7 or almost 27.8 million. So if you will flip to me on page 3, and with me on page 3, I have there's 3 charts in there that kind of break down graphically how our budget is broken down. So on page 3, the operating expenses, and that we're looking at the 2 big categories. So purchase power, which is the one we can't really control, amounts to 72% of our operating budget, while everything else is about 28%. And then next on page 4, we'll look at those kind of broken up even more. So our transmission access it's hardly anything. It's $5,000. So in the overall $7.7 million budget, it doesn't amount to any percentage. Our distribution operation, which is operating the distribution system, accounts for 34%. Our customer-related expenses accounts for 28%. Storeroom is 8%. This is large this year just because of the depreciation we're showing on the new facility. And then our general administrative is about 30%. And then the final graph for this section breaks down general administrative into its own graphical reference. So starting on the light blue, 31% of our general administrative expenses go to admin payroll, which again is CEO, payroll, finance, technology, janitorial, those kind of things. 14% goes to professional services, the services that we contract outside of our internal employees. 9% of our budget goes to insurance. 21% goes to employee benefits. 2% to franchise fees, 3% to community support. This year it's about 13% for utilities, and then the final category at 7% is the all others, which is the back debts, interest expense, that kind of thing. The next section is our capital budget, which I'm going to go through here quickly, but there's a page behind that will go over all of the major projects that make some of these categories and why they're so much higher than they were.
Marcy. Councilwoman Cantu has a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to page 4 and describe the general?
You need to talk into your mic.
Can you describe the general administration? Because you said how much percentage is that?
The overall budget, it is
No, the general.
30%.
And then, okay, the 34% and 28%.
So was there another question for Ms.
Yes, there's another question. Councilwoman Cantu has a question.
And the storeroom, you said it was only 8%?
You need to
Ms.
talk
Notice
into
we
your mic.
can't.
You need to talk into your mic.
The
so you can
storeroom
hear.
was only 8%?
There's a question about the storeroom and percentage of 8%.
Yes, that's correct. That's what it breaks out to for the operating budget. Excluding for
Why on the first page, on page 2, it's 232%. Can you explain that to me, please?
that's the increase over the projection for 2020. So the breakdown that you see on the Excel sheet that's got all of the numbers, that's comparing 2020's projection to 2021's budget. But the charts are just referencing 2021's budget. So it's taking all of the pieces and then breaking them out to the total of the 7.7 million. So it's the percent of total dollars spent in 2021's budget.
So it's not going to match, that's what you're saying?
The numbers are not matching is her question.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, we still can't hear.
Yes, her
Is there
question
another
is
question?
that the numbers are not going to match is her question.
That's correct. So the sheet that you see with all the numbers, that's page 2, is comparing 2020 to 2021. So you can see the increase from year over year. But the charts are just focusing on 2021's budget. So it is taking the total number of dollars for all other, which is the 7.7 million. That is the second to the bottom line on the 2020 budget, $7,763,900. It's taking the categories of transmission, distribution, storeroom, customer accounts, and general administrative, and it's giving you the proportion of those categories to the 7.7 million. So it all falls within the 2021 budget.
Okay, thank you.
That's all for questions.
Okay, Ms. Jacobs, you can go ahead and go forward with the capital budget.
Okay. This budget's set up the same way. You see the 2019 actual, the 2020 budget, the projection for 2020, and also the forecast for 2021. And then those following two categories are the same. They're comparing the 2020 projection to the 2021. And so these are not going to flow into the charts, these back two columns. But when looking at the first category, which is land buildings and improvements, there's a large number in there. There's a large number in 2020 and a large number in 2021 because those two are the costs of our new facility. In 2020, we projected we're going to spend about $9 million. In 2021, it's going to be about 8.1 million. So that will skew some of the charts in the back because we've never had expenses that large, but that's all due to the facility. Our next category is transmission plant, and that's about $16,000. That's, again, just the things that we have to do to stay in compliance and keep our transmission line up and running. The substations, including land and structures, there's a huge increase in there, which I'll talk about a little bit on the next page, but we're budgeting $3.3 million for that section. Poles, towers, and fixtures, we're budgeting right at $2 million, which is a slight decrease over the prior year. Overhead and underground fixtures is about $2.4 million, which is also a slight decrease from the prior year. For transformers and other special equipment, we're budgeting about $500,000. Those are all three of these categories, and services and meters are things that for new builds. So when we have new subdivisions, customers that are coming in for the first time on a piece of land that doesn't have electricity, and then some of that is also part of our pole replacement program where we go and test our poles, get them inspected, and then replace the ones that are, rotten or are not going to stand for the next 10 years. So that's our replacement cycle. So these four categories are basically all of the costs we budgeted for new construction and pole replacement. Services and meters, most of that services, we don't have, because our AMI project is done and all those meters are brand new, we haven't budgeted very much in there. We budgeted enough to take care of new customers if we have to buy new meters, but there's not a significant amount in there. So, again, those categories are related to serving new customers and making sure that we have what we need there. Lighting, the majority of this is the city lighting project. We committed to changing out all of the lights that the owner cities pay for, $30 monthly bill, in a 3-year period. We are going to finish that in a 2-year period. They are finishing up the lights for what we budgeted for 2020, and then in January, they're just going to finish out what we originally planned for the next 2 years. So that's why there's a significant increase for 2021 over 2020, because we're going to go ahead and just finish changing out all those lights within the first quarter of 2021, whereas originally we thought we would do it over a 3-year period. Net capitalized bond interest, that has nothing. That used to be something that when we had a bond issue, we could capitalize some of the interest, but the rules have changed. But for historical purposes, because we budgeted in 2020, that's still left in there. Communications equipment, this is both for our AMI communications and our SCADA communications. SCADA is what allows us to talk to some of our distribution out in the field and our substations. That way somebody is able to do some of the work from the office instead of having to go into the substation and switch. And so there's just a slight cost in there of $44,500. And then the admin adjustment, that's really an accounting adjustment. What it does is for instance, when we got rid of all of the meters that were old, it's going to take down the meter number. So when you would normally see a larger number in meters, if we were to take out those meters, it's going to be a smaller number, which will skew the budget. So adding in the admin adjustment just trims those two up. I'm sorry. budgeting $150,000. So overall, our budget is $8.9 million for that section for the distribution plant. The next section are our fixed assets, which the first one is schools and transportation. Again, some of this is related to buying new tools for the new facility, but we're also taking advantage of the TURP program, which I believe y'all are very familiar with. So there are some trucks in there that we are spending money on in the transportation equipment that are part of the TURP program. The next category is office and computer equipment, and this is also a large increase. It's budgeted $917,000. And the reason for that is it's our normal replacement of assets, but then it's also getting some of that stuff for the new facility ready to go. So this is a large increase in 2021. We don't expect it to be this high in the future years. And then that's also why there's some, it's larger in 2020. So we started to purchase some of the things that we need to get the facility ready, and then we'll finalize that. So overall, our total capital budget is right at $18.6 million.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll let you go on to, I know you have another pie chart for that.
So I have just the projects we'll go over first real quick, and then we'll hit the pie charts because I kind of skipped over the projects. But on page 7, in all of these categories are pieces of these. So we account for poles and poles, overhead. They're spread throughout, so I just wanted to go over what our major projects are. So the substation, I think we budgeted $3 million. We are going to replace the box structure. That's what causes a lot of the outages that we have out of the Floresville substation, and we're going to replace it with an A-frame structure, which is what is in all the rest of the equipment in our substation, so that should definitely improve reliability. We are going to also begin the SS10 to FD50 circuit tie. We are in the process of building the SS30 circuit, but we're also going to connect it. That way we can feed load from either side. Right now it's too small, the conductor is too small. So if we had an issue where somebody took out one of those lines, this will allow us to switch that load easily while the repairs are being made. We're also going to perform an engineering study. It's been a few years since we've done one, and we've had a lot of growth in a lot of areas that we've never had before, so we want to make sure that all of our future needs are being met for reliability and growth. As I talked about before, we're going to continue to inspect, treat, and replace poles as needed. We have budgeted for next year to inspect 4,400 poles. We're on a 10-year replacement cycle, so we try to get through all of our poles and get them inspected and treated within that 10-year period. In the substation, we'll also be replacing relays and upgrade tap changer controls. That's just updating of aged equipment and then providing distribution automation that we can operate through our SCADA system. We're also adding an SS30 new circuit tie. It's the same as SS10 to FD50. But this will help feed some of the SS20 to SS30, which I know that doesn't, those type of labels don't need much, but there's about 6 miles that we're going to build to help just with reliability and being able to feed from multiple areas. Last year, if you'll recall, there was a line that went down during one of the storms, and it was in the middle of a field that had just been plowed, and it took hours for our guys to get, they were just getting stuck left and right. And so that is one of the projects that we're going to do in 2021 is we're going to relocate the line on County Road 1347. That way it's easier to maintain, easier to drive down and look at it if we do have any outages. And again, that's just for reliability. There's one last major project that we're going to do, which is Highway 2579 to Highway 1303 reconductor. It's about a 2,200 feet span of reconductor. We've been having some voltage drops. Because the conductor is too small there, so we want to reconductor that line and make sure it's the right size. As we talked about with our vehicles, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we're going to replace as part of the TURP program, and then there's 2 additional that we're going to buy. We're going to replace a service bucket truck, and then we're going to purchase an electric forklift for our new facility. The emissions and all the things you have to consider for the forklifts that we have, it was very expensive to outfit our new warehouse to fit that, so it's just a whole lot less than expensive to buy a new forklift. It's electric. And then obviously we're going to complete the construction of the new facility Page 8 is a pie chart. Again, this is just going to reflect 2021. This is the amount of money for the three major categories of our capital budget. The first category is transmission and substation, that's 18%. Distribution plant is 30% of that budget, and then general and common, which is what I call fixed assets, vehicles, large tools, office furniture, things like that, that accounts for 52%. Normally, it's not that big of a piece of a pie, but because of the new facility, there's a lot of things that we're having to buy. It's just a one-time, and that's impacting that category. Page 9 is a breakdown of the distribution plan, so the categories just within the distribution plan. The first one is the largest at 36%, and that's substations. And again, that's because of the box structure to 8-frame change. That's quite expensive. And in doing that, we have to buy a new substation transformer, which is about $1 million by itself. So that's a major category. The next one in the maroon is 22%, which reflects poles, towers, and fixtures. 27% is overhead and underground devices. 6% is allocated for transformers and special equipment, 3% for services and meters, 4% to the lighting project, and also just new customer lights. And then the next two categories really come out to zero overall. One of them is an actual zero, and then communications equipment is very small amount. And then the final is 2% for the activity adjustment, which again is just the accounting adjustment. So that's the end of the capital portion.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from our council?
There are none, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jacobs, would you like to recap, or do you have any more information for us?
I don't think so. If there's no more questions, you can always ask more questions if you have some, but we've got a lot planned. It's a very aggressive capital plan. Operating's pretty smooth compared to where it was, but it's a very aggressive capital plan, but we're really trying to do some good things to get, our system more up to date and make it more reliable. So.
Yes, and as a member of the Phelps Board, we did spend quite a bit of time going over this with Marcy as well as Mr. Love, and it passed unanimously on the board. So thank you very much for all your hard work on this.
If we're ready, we'll go to page 10, and this is this is what I alluded to, the page in the back where we're showing the increase in the city transfers to the city. We are projecting that we will transfer about right at 1 million, 64% if the board votes to transfer up to the 3%. Then the city of Floresville is estimated to get $641,000, city of Post $180,000, and city of Stockdale $180,000. And then our final page is just a recap of how all the pieces fit together. So we're taking our operating budget, we're taking our capital budget, and then we're also adding in things that aren't in the budget, like our principal and interest payment, our distributions to the other cities, and then we're showing you how that's funded overall. And I believe at the 2018, when we came for 2018 bonds, we told you that we are not spending the bond money on the facility, and that is still true. So you'll see some differences in the very bottom section when I go over it as compared to what you've seen in the past. So power sold for 2021 is right at 33.4 million. This is the income portion, not the expense portion. Other revenue, 2.7 million. That's all of the fees we collect. That's our transmission access revenue, interest expense, anything that's not the power sold is in the next category. So overall, our total net revenue is projected to be 36.1 million. Our purchase power expense, we talked about 20 million. Distribution expense would be about 2.6. Transmission expense is just 6,000. Administrative expense of 2.3 million, and other operating expenses of 2.8. Overall, that's a $27.7 million operating budget. Our principal and interest payment right now is projected to be about 3.6 million. If you'll recall, we are doing a refunding on the 2011 and 2009 issue, so that will drop slightly. I think they were estimated about $130,000 a year, but it's not a significant drop in a year, but that is still reflecting the numbers without the refunding. The earnings to the distribution, or earnings to the earnings distribution to the owner cities is right at $1 million. And then we add back in the appreciation charge to operations because it's a non-cash item. So what we're doing is we're showing where all of our cash is going. So we collected 36 million, we're spending 27.7 in operating, we're spending 4 million, almost 5 million in all these other categories, and that leaves us with about 4.5 million collected from our customers. And then we go into our capital budget, which is the land building improvements of 8.1, transmission plant additions of 17,000, distribution plant additions of 8.9 million, tools and transportation equipment 594,000, office and computer equipment of 917,000, for an overall capital budget of 18,597,000. So if you look at that, it leaves us a deficit. So what it says is you haven't collected enough in rates to cover this, and you're short by 14 million. So the next category below is where we show where that money is going to be funded from. Funds for revenue is at 4.5 million. Funds from cash, so this is the amount that we're paying for the facility, 8.1 million out of money that we've already saved up in cash. And then the final is funds from the bond proceeds and working capital. So we issued those bonds in 18 to cover 19, 20, and 21. So there's about $5.9 million that we'll use of the bonds for capital improvements. So overall, that's how we fund all of our budgets.
Any questions for Ms. Jacobs?
There are none, Mayor.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Any other comments that you would like to make to the council?
Not really. I just appreciate y'all giving me this opportunity to present that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the mayor, myself, and we'll get those answers for you.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Y'all too. Thank you.
Okay, council, moving on to our next item, which is our new business, consideration and action to approve the city manager to advertise and seek bids for the event center parking lot improvement project. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Turner.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So this is a project I know we are all familiar with. Just to remind everybody, the city of Floresville was awarded $100,000 from SARA. And then EDC in this budget, I believe somewhere around $265,000 they've set aside to go with this project. We bid it one time before, but it's time for us to bid again so that we can see what those prices are. I put a little insert in there so you can see all the bio swells and all those things that Sarah was requiring, but it's for the entire parking lot. And I am hoping that between Sarah and EDC's partnership, we can find that, and of course the next funding, if it's not enough, this is allowable from our hot tax, so we can do that in reference to our hot tax. And so what I'm asking you to do is to allow us to go out to bid. We're taking action. There will be no construction starting until you all approve the bid and accept them. We're looking at a tight schedule to put it out. Hopefully we can have the bids ready to be opened on the 10th of December, and then before you wait your December meeting, so that you can approve it and probably start it as early as we can in 2021. So that's what we request. If you all have any questions.
Ms. Turner, it's just for the parking lot, right?
Yes, ma'am. This is just for the parking lot improvements for the front of the parking lot. At one time we had talked about moving some of the lights or something like that. This is only for the pavement itself of the parking lot in the front of the building.
Any other questions by council?
I have a question, Mayor. How many bids do we have to have?
You can talk closer to your mic.
As far as
There we go.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
In reference to the number of bids, normally we need to have at least 2, but because there are not a lot of activities right now, our engineer anticipates that we'll probably have several different bidders to come. So they know that this will be in the Wilson County News. We'll put it there tomorrow, and then it goes out on an internet association that the engineer, Interpret is our engineer, that's going to be doing that. And we also will share it with San Antonio River Authority to allow those bids to go forward, but we should receive at least 2 to 3 bids.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions by the council?
I
Mr. Turner, I do have a question. You had mentioned that this is just for the parking lot and not anything to do with the lighting. If there was a decision to look at lighting again,
Is there another question?
would there be, I mean, what would that do after we do the parking lot and then there was, it was brought up again to look at lighting again?
Well, the grant from Sarah, the question there is if the lighting comes back again. So what would happen is that the grant is specific for the parking lot itself, and EDC's money, it was specified for the parking lot and improvement, so that if there was extra money, we could do it off of that and break it out for a different one. But the specification itself is only going to be for the improvements. But it does need other lighting. We've made some changes in reference to, I know you will approve some painting and things. We had to do some things with the HVAC, so that's likely that we'll come back and have to look at a different project, not necessarily this one.
Okay, thank you.
Did you hear me okay, Mary?
Yes, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Any other questions or comments by the council?
Yes, I have a question. So is there any money coming from the
Talk
city
closer to
budget?
it, Jake.
Not as of yet, because we don't know the entire amount yet, Councilwoman. So we have $1,000 from Sarah, and then we have the $265 from EDC.
Okay.
So anything above that would have to come from the city budget, and we plan on using hot tax if that's necessary. But we don't know what the numbers are.
Okay.
So to go back to Councilwoman Marissa's question, let's say that I come in, I have enough to do both, and I take some extra money, then we can look at the lights if we want to. But it depends on, we don't know what the budget is yet, what the amount would be. So we're hoping to do that. But the hot tax can be used if I have to get up to $300,000 or $400,000. Hot tax can be used to complete that project. Because I know you all spend a lot of time in the parking lot. It does need to have, make those improvements.
Mr. Turner, I would think that we would want to wait and see how our hot tax funding turns out, especially since after the pandemic,
Yes.
you know, since hotels were not being utilized as much as prior years, before we would look into any other decisions like that using hot funds.
Well, we'll have to definitely see, once we get a number of what it would cost for this parking lot. The engineer had a projected number, but he's not really comfortable with sharing that number as of yet, because prices are everywhere all over everything. So as soon as we get a number, then we can definitely look at those questions. And it will come back to the council before we actually award anything. So we bid it first, have that submission, then the next time we'll be awarding the bid if you want to. Or we could just wait. Sarah has given us an extension to this time, so we can just see how we move forward.
Mr. I would prefer we would get 3 bids.
It would be a perfect scenario if you get 3 bids, but because it starts at a large size, not everybody can bond to do those kind of things, because there's a lot of bonding. Sometimes our local vendors are not able to bond because they have to bond sometimes double the amount that they're doing, so they have over $1.5 million in bonding, so it's kind of hard for them sometimes because of the size of the project. But I'll definitely let the engineer know that our goal is to have 3. Typically, we have at least 2. Is that right, Mike?
Yes.
2 to 3 bids, and so we're hoping that people will be a little hungry at this point in time.
I have another question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Intrepid, is that the one that's doing is involved with our sidewalks right now?
Yes, Intrepid is our engineer, and
Okay.
yes, and they helped design the application for Sarah. So they'll be the engineer on this project as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another comment. I would definitely like to wait on, like the bid process and everything because of the whole pandemic, and I'm more concerned about bringing in the workers from, that were currently furloughed.
One has something to do with the other. So
It's a different kind of-
the Sarah San Antonio River Authority gave us a grant for $100,000. And then EDC gave us $265,000 for this project. And so those are the things you have to be able to use it for. The hot tax we're talking about can only be used on the event center itself.
Okay,
So we can bring staff back that work only at the event center.
okay.
So that's the hot tax. So those are the kind of things we'll look at, and I'm quite sure Cindy's here that she's going to sit staff that we can look at all those numbers in reference to the furloughed employees and things that will come up at your December meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by council before I open the floor?
There are none, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If not, I will entertain a motion on item 3A.
I move to approve the city manager to advertise and seek bids for the event center parking lot.
You have a motion by Councilwoman Cantu.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Cantu. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second on the floor. Any citizens' comments?
There are none, Mayor.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And because I can't see too well on that one, you'll have to give me the numbers of
It's
that.
3-0.
3-0 to approve the city manager to advertise and seek bids for the event center parking lot improvement project. Thank you so much. With no other.
Wait a minute,
further
I'm sorry.
business on-
Wait, we have to correct that. Was
Yes.
that against 3-1?
You had 3 in favor, and you had Councilwoman J. Jimenez not vote in favor of it. So I'm not sure if how she will be voting on that.
Okay, against.
She is against that.
Okay, so I have a vote on that of 3-1, correct?
Correct.
Right, okay, thank you so much. All right, I tell you what, we don't have any further items on the agenda for tonight. We want to encourage you, we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow afternoon for our special meeting at 4:30. With no further business on the agenda, I will conclude this meeting at 6:46. Have a good, safe evening. Thank you, everyone.